hey, I'm glad you're here. This is season 15 of VHUs. 15! If you could go back and tell my 15-year-old self that I would be hosting 15 seasons of something, which would introduce me to so many wonderful people and give me the opportunity to connect with people I greatly admire, I would not believe you. Much less that I would have such an incredible wife and wonderful kid, both of which will be on this season. So season 15, it's all about the numbers. We have our classic format, only the professions are ones I thought I'd have at 15. We have 3 episodes about the number 5. 5 times 3 is 15. You get it. Nerd stuff I do that no one really cares about. Nonetheless, we have a very exciting season, new flavors, new themes. Don't worry though, Rodney's theme will return, but season 15 features new intro and outro pieces created exclusively by Aleli Chaval, who is an Argentine-Brazilian composer from the music groups Telefonema and Gornica. Telefonema has a new single, La Musica Oscura, which is out now, and an album to follow, so please check them out. We are also on Patreon, patreon.com/VHUS. Please think of supporting the show, as that's how we support the artists that we support. We have giveaways, bonus episodes. I write stuff that'll never see the light of day on these episodes, so feel free to go over and read about ninjas and eyes and stuff. All of our episode artwork also is available in a variety of objects, so help get the word out about the show and look rad doing so. Go to vhspodcast.threadless.com. So that's everything, really. Thank you for being you. Thanks for listening. And let's just get into season 15 here. We're kicking things off with our classic format, where each episode is about a movie and the guest has the profession or experience portrayed in the film. Now, you already know what movie we're talking about, and it might shock you, as I usually cover older films, often way lesser known, but I chose this obviously because I wanted to talk about it with a chef, but also because I didn't really like it when it came out. And we talk about that, as well as if it was my fault. Spoiler alert, it was. Hopefully, this will be an example of how every movie can spark an interesting conversation far beyond if it's good or bad or a star rating on Letterboxd. Follow me on there. So please allow me to welcome you to the table, and I hope you go into this without reservations. As a chef and I talk, the menu.
Innocence can be hell. Innocence can be hell. Can be hell. Innocence can be hell. Innocence can be hell.
Greetings and salutations. This is VHS, and I'm your host, Dirk Marshall. For this tasty little episode, we welcome back Chef Aaron Barnett. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. Some listeners will recall our previous episode together where we talked about the film Who's Killing the Great Chefs of Europe, where chefs are murdered in the style of their signature dishes. For the sake of this conversation, and we're not going to do your whole backstory, but I do want to mention your restaurant is St. Jack, correct?
Yep, Restaurant St. Jack, and then I'm the consulting chef at Heavenly Creatures,
Yes.
and now Giant Squid, a consulting company.
Okay. But you were involved in some way with Scotch Lodge, is that correct?
Yeah, Tim, the chef there, was my lead line cook at St. Jack years ago, and so when Tommy approached me about helping him get his menu up and running for Scotch Lodge, I put Tim in place there because he's just a super talented guy. And so, yeah, I was the opening consulting chef, basically.
Okay, opening consulting. And what can you tell us about Heavenly Creatures?
That was like a midlife crisis bar, essentially. So Joel, post-COVID, or actually kind of towards the tail end of COVID, Joel and I were both, sad and running restaurants, and it wasn't much fun. And we didn't know what the future had in store. They had just taken over the spot where Chesa used to be on Broadway, and the little churro spot that was in front, 180, was just being used for storage. Like there was nothing in there. And so Joel was like, yeah, I might just put a little bottle shop in here to keep myself busy. And I was like, yeah, but it's got a hood. And he was like, oh, no. And I was like, oh, yeah. It's like, let's make this a lot harder than it
Well,
has to be. So, we live pretty close to each other, but we just didn't see each other ever, family, work, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, this became a way for us to hang out. So, now we see each other a couple times a week. We talk on the phone all the time. We get to work with food, we get to work with wine. It's a cute little space. Or, it's a lot of fun.
and as far as St. Jack goes, I saw a bio for you online, and it said the restaurant was Lyonnaise, and I don't know what that means.
I mean, it's evolved. Honestly, we should probably rewrite that thing. When we first opened, we were like heavily a Lyonnaise Bouchon. So Lyon was like the blue collar kind of hub of the country. It's kind of dead in the middle. There is a big wine producing region right next door, but basically it's where all the textile workers were. Like big hub for textiles, big hub for butchery, wine production, animals, all that stuff. So there was a lot of like abattoirs and a lot of blue collar people. So most of the good stuff got shipped off to Paris or the bigger cities. And so Lyon was kind of known for keeping all the offcuts and the weird stuff and the cheap things and, making it taste good. So a Bouchon traditionally is going to be like rustic, hearty, heavy food. There's actually a donkey snout salad. They eat a lot of tripe, a lot of like blood sausage, a lot of all this stuff. So when we first opened, that was like our bread and butter. It was kind of French food for the people because we wanted to get away from it being fine dining. But after we got a bunch of attention, press and whatever, we got a new customer base in that wanted foie gras and they wanted, expensive wine and they wanted all these things that we didn't really offer. And so we kind of threw a couple things on here and there and we're like, well, sure, if they want it, let's go for it. And then now, 14 years later, we are a fine dining luxurious French restaurant,
Huh.
which I'm actually trying to tone down now. I'm implementing a bar menu starting yesterday. We haven't told anybody, but we now have a full bar menu. It's walk-ins, it's casual, small plates, all that kind of stuff. So we're trying to treat it like Cave de St. Jack's or like our little version of a wine bar.
I love that. Up top, I just wanted to talk about this since you've mentioned consulting and you're the chef at St. Jack. There's different positions within a kitchen, and sometimes it's confusing for people. So if you wouldn't mind breaking down the difference between a chef de cuisine, and like a sous chef, I think those are the three most people are hearing.
Yeah. So there's usually the executive chef or head chef. That would be me. And so basically my job is I'm like overarching, right? So I oversee everybody, I oversee everything, I oversee the managers. I work directly with the GM mostly. I still work service every night or most nights just because I like doing that. And then below me is George, and he is our chef de cuisine. So that means he's in charge of all daily operations of the kitchen. So he's the one that does the scheduling, inventory. He helps develop with all the menu development. Yeah, he's doing a great job with kind of running the ship and working on menu items and all that kind of stuff. And so I work with him on that.
Okay.
Sous chef is kind of like the shitty job that nobody really wants because you're not quite a line cook anymore. You're not quite like the hardcore manager now, but you still have to like get people to do what you want them to do. And oftentimes the guy that you're just having your smoke break with and out drinking with the night before is no longer, now he's your boss again, and that doesn't work out too well sometimes. So it's a tough gig, but they're in charge of making sure that, again, food quality is high. They do some of the ordering as well, and then they just take a lot of grief from everybody else because they're dead in the middle.
Okay, perfect. All
Shout
right.
out to Rudy.
This movie doesn't really delve into weather, but up top, I did also want to address the impact that weather can have on restaurants and things. We've had kind of a rough, definitely a week at least of like ice and snow, and I don't know if people really know what that means to the service industry.
Well, it means a lot of things. You have to make a lot of choices. Do you try to call people in and make them go through that, like drive in the snow and get all the way there, and then potentially have no work really to do because no one's coming out? But it means lost wages for all of my employees.
Mhm.
It means tons of lost revenue for the restaurant. And it's January, February is notoriously kind of the quietest time of year. So it just comes at the worst possible time, and yeah, but I mean, we lost 85% of our revenue, I would estimate for that week. Because even the days leading up, like the day leading up to it and the day post, still
Everyone's
people weren't
great.
really they were scared to go out. So there wasn't a ton to be done. We did open one of the days, but didn't do anything. We tried the next day because they said it was going to warm up, and it never did.
Ugh. I don't think a lot of people are aware just that weather can impact a business. An 85% loss of like revenue is huge for a business.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're talking about a quarter of the month, right? So, an entire quarter of a month with your pay gone And then, like your cooks, they can't afford anything. Your servers working on tips, they lose out on all that too. So we just had a meeting with the mayor yesterday, actually, and in that we're trying to find some ways to set up systems so that this kind of thing doesn't necessarily happen again,
Yeah.
and at least infrastructure wise, with like how the city handles it, and then also trying to find emergency funds for people like service workers and whatever who just lose out on all this income, and it's something that they can't have no control over. So basically, like really quick unemployment, essentially.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh. The film that brings us together is The Menu from 2022. It's a horror comedy currently streaming on Hulu and Max, but I'd be a fool to not say support your local video store like Movie Madness right here in Portland, Oregon. It's directed by Mark Mylod, who does a ton of TV, like from Entourage to 37 episodes of Succession, very successful. Written by Seth Reese and Will Tracy, both comedy writers. Our cinematography is Peter Deming, who worked on Twin Peaks The Return, Mulholland Drive, Scream 4, Cabin in the Woods. Production design by Ethan Tobman, who also worked on Taylor Swift videos and the Eras Tour video movie.
Ooh, I
Yep,
saw that.
there you go. It stars Nicholas Hoult, who you probably know from Fury Road and About a Boy. Rafe Fiennes from Spider and Lego Movie 2. Anya Taylor-Joy from The Witch and Playmobil, the movie. Those are our principal players. We'll get to the others as we progress. The synopsis is a young couple travels to a remote island to eat in an exclusive restaurant where the chef has prepared a lavish menu with some shocking surprises. So let's press play on The Menu. We start with Tyler and Margot standing on a dock, and he reprimands her for smoking, says it dulls the palate.
Babe, please don't smoke. It'll kill your palate.
Then my palate will die happy.
Hey, Margot, tonight is huge, okay? The flavor profiles, it's all super delicate. When you smoke, you ruin your ability to be able to appreciate
Come on.
them. Please, please.
How many chefs have you come across in your profession that smoke? I mean,
It's less now, but I
okay,
would say it was about 90% at one point.
right. And I was thinking about French cuisine and how prevalent smoking is in France. I was like, well, that's a lot of chefs. I mean,
Oh yeah,
you know,
it's a lot of cigarettes.
yes. He reveals that people pay $1,250 a head for this dining experience. And I was just thinking about the boat travel and the staffing and the sourcing. And I was like, this isn't that much money,
No, not for the production they're putting on, that's for sure.
right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like they're losing money on this entire situation.
We'll probably get into it later, but I'm imagining a lot of that labor is free.
Oh, right. For the,
Yeah.
yeah,
The stages, the stagiaires.
the stage. So let's just dive in there. There are several business models for restaurants. And I was recently talking to someone who was a consultant, and they were speaking to the effect that right now there's really two super sustainable models, one being like the fast casual where you remove like the front of the house and that sort of thing, and then the that front of the house being like servers, greeters, that kind of stuff, and you have someone at a cash register, and then the big price tag opulent, you're selling basically tickets to your dinner ahead of time. What do you think about that?
I agree. I think that you can either cut all your labor and not have to worry about it, and cut your food costs to the point where you're kind of serving roadkill. You're just scraping stuff up and trying to get it to work. But the other option is that people always have anniversaries and birthdays and special occasions, and expense accounts exist and all that kind of stuff. It's the stuff in the middle that's hard, especially with how things are going right now with the cost of goods and cost of labor and all that kind of stuff. You're kind of in a world now where you can go to a mid-level restaurant and you're going to pay roughly what you're going to pay at a fine dining restaurant because the cost of goods is so high. So.
Mhm. That's true. It's scary times. On the dock, we see a group of business bros, a critic from Saveur, and an actor. Hospitality is the name of the game, and St. Jack has an excellent staff, as did your previous restaurant, Lemoule, where
Nice.
we always felt welcomed, and my family knew the names of the people that worked at your restaurant, which is not,
Yeah.
I don't think that's normal. And like when my parents would come in, or my wife's parents would come in, they knew like, oh, you're here to get a gift card because it's Dirk's birthday. And
Yep.
it's like, I just wanted to mention that because I don't know how you create something like that and find people to believe in what you're doing and give themselves like 120%, but you have like a track record that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's finding the right people for the job is always the hard part, and treating them like family is the key thing. You can run a kitchen like or a restaurant like a totalitarian kind of regime, or you can do, which is what I used to do when I was younger and angry
Yeah.
and frustrated and stressed out. But as I got older, I mean, the name of the game here is like longevity.
Mhm.
I'm still working at the same place I've worked for 13, 14 years. I mean, I've never done that before.
Yeah.
So trying to figure out how to keep people happy, uplifted, feeling good. It's a hard job. So if you can keep people feeling good about it and they feel like they're doing well, then that's all that matters. And that translates, I mean, that sounds like bullshit, but it does. It translates to like, when you guys come in and you get treated well and they remember everything about you and they say hi to your daughter and they do all the right things. That's what we're trying to instill in all the spots.
Yeah.
Culture.
Yeah. Well put. What's your opinion on the role critics play? Because this movie also riffs on the idea that the critic and that they make the chef or break the chef and that sort of thing.
I think that I vacillate, right? Like when I was young, I was very, like I said, very angry. I needed to, I knew I was right and everybody else was wrong, that kind of a mentality. I had to control everything. And so having somebody come in and write a narrative about you and what you spend 14 hours a day doing and in your off time thinking about,
Mhm.
and, hurting relationships with family because you're always at work or doing all this stuff, right? And having somebody who, at that point in my career, I'm not saying this is how I feel now, but at that point in my career, having somebody come in who doesn't know as much about it as you do, critique you, is really hard. And you always have to take it with a grain of salt. And I took it very personally. So I don't think it ever impacted my career. Luckily, I never had a real bad review. I had one middling review, but everything I've had has been pretty positive. I always look at the negative part of that review and focus on that because that's how I am as a human.
Yeah.
But it can hurt if you get a bad review right out the gates. It's hard to come back from that.
Yeah. On the boat, they're welcomed with an oyster with a mignonette emulsion, lemon caviar, and an oyster leaf. What's a mignonette and how would you emulsify it?
A mignonette is going to be some sort of acidic situation that you're going to put on an oyster. So a mignonette is typically going to be vinegar with aromatics in it. More often than not, it's a shallot. Whether it's a raw shallot that's diced up, usually there's black pepper, a little bit of salt. So in this case, if I recall, it was a white.
Yes.
It was like a white foamy situation. So it would be white wine vinegar or champagne vinegar, I would imagine, and then some kind of an allium, and then balance it out with salt and sugar. And then there would probably, in this case, being that it's a more modernist kitchen, there was probably some emulsifier that they would use to whip it into a little foamy situation and put it on top.
Got it. Okay. Did it sound good to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like lemon's good.
Yeah.
Acid's good. The foamy situation, probably, if it's that high level of a restaurant, and they said it was one of those classic dishes. It's like going to the French Laundry and you get like their caviar set there, their oyster with the caviar and pearls and stuff. Like, of course it's good. You know what I mean? Like that was like one of the dishes that made them. So if that was a classic dish, then it's probably a pretty tasty situation. And oyster leaf is a fun herb that actually does taste like oysters. So that would just reinforce it. It's actually a well thought out set.
Interesting. They arrive at the island. They're greeted by Elsa, who's played by Hong Chow, who is also in The Whale. She's very cold, and I think she's really great in this movie, but it's one of the things that Sarah and I instantly, when we first saw it, we were like, nope, I would hate that. We were just in Vegas. I won't say what restaurant, but we walked in, and the person was so cold and so like, we just wanted to leave right at that moment. But we're like, let's see how this trendy place plays out, and it was fine, but like, it really put us off. Like just that.
Yeah, that's not somebody I would have hired. No.
No, no. Oh man. We learned that Margot isn't supposed to be there, and they know every guest in their backgrounds. Now, my wife and I have been privy to some special kindness at your restaurants, and so I wanted to ask about this kind of sleuthing and also share a funny story because it was my birthday one year, and we were kind of bopping around in the area where your restaurant was. And we wanted to go in and have a little steak tartare, I think is what the situation was. So we went in and we were seated in a part of the bar where there weren't other people. And then we noticed that the staff was all kind of staring at us. And so we were like, are we not supposed to be here? Like, did we get seated in the wrong spot? And then I'll shorten the story drastically. You had texted photos of us so that they knew when we came in, and then you sent something over. And so they were looking at us because they were trying to figure out if we were the people that you had sent a picture of. And I was like, that's the kind of level of stuff that's not as creepy as this movie, but what can you say just to the knowing of your clientele? Like your front of the house people, are they looking to see if there's a celebrity or someone that's a regular, or I'm sure stuff's now tracked via computer or
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, it was all just based on you'd have like a book, and in that book, you would have everybody's name who you would consider to be a VIP.
right,
If you were at a very high level place, oftentimes you'd have food critics' pictures, even the ones who you weren't supposed to know who they were,
right.
or who were anonymous. You would have their photos up like somewhere in the restaurant. Yeah, like I worked at three Michelin star restaurants, pre cell phones. I mean, we had cell phones, but pre all the internet stuff.
Yeah.
Um, we kept track of what you liked, what you ordered when you came in last, if you liked this wine or that champagne, or if you wanted to get the steak tartare because you like steak tartare, or oh, we should give Dirk a call because he likes uni. We're running uni right now, like that kind of a thing. And so they keep tabs on that. They have people who just do that, so they know more about you when you walk in the door than than you would expect. And then it happens everywhere. I went to a restaurant in Paris, and I walked in, and when I walked in, you walked in through the door, and there was just two people seated in a dark room, and they looked and they was like, "Good evening, Chef Barnett."
Oh, what?
And I was like, "Oh, whoa!" I was like, didn't even say anything. And then, like, as we're walking to the table, the maitre d was like, "I trust that your restaurant, Saint Jack, is doing well." And I was just like, "Holy shit!" Okay, so this guy's like, he knows all about it.
So rad.
And that happened, four more times while we were there. So yeah, it's common. And like nowadays, yeah, it's like part of your open table or resi or whatever. It's like you can just put guest notes in, like this guy's a pain in the ass, or just very or whatever, right? Like you can put whatever you want in it.
Yeah. Ah, it's fascinating. They tour the island, and it's described as a culinary biome. Now, this is a horror comedy, and part of what we found issue with when we first watched it was our extended family consists of many chefs and people that work in the food industry. And so a joke has a target. And so when this comedy was playing out, we disagreed with so many things that were happening because we were personalizing it the whole time.
Yeah, yeah,
So when they're talking about this, like we were like, well, no, because like Chef Renee Erickson in Seattle, she has Bateau, and they like, raise their own cattle, and each night they serve just the cuts that they have from that animal. So someone might get a cut of beef that no one else in the restaurant can get. And I'm
sure.
like, I think that's amazing. I love that. Or like Justin Wills at Restaurant Beck in the Oregon Coast, like foraging for sea beans or whatever. It's like when they were plating some of these dishes, I was like, this isn't bullshit, people. Like this is good food. But it's something when I was talking to people about the movie that maybe don't have those personal connections. They're like, yeah, it was a fun horror movie, and I'm like, well, harumph over here as well.
Yeah, no, that's for real. I mean, you look at any of these videos of Noma and all
Yeah,
these other restaurants and places, especially in like the new Nordic style, it's crazy. Like it is insane. I mean, I've worked at very high level restaurants and like nothing like that, but that is a thing. It's a move. And so I
yeah.
thought it was pretty funny, that whole portion of it.
This section of the film has the chef's table swelling string sounds that are very purposefully used in the film. The composer is Colin Stetson, who worked on Hereditary and Color Out of Space. So I wanted to talk a second about music in restaurants because I find that yourself, like Ryan Roadhouse with Notaguro, like you go in and there's not this like swelling orchestral music that's overtly serious, but the food is
Yeah.
like, wonderfully, beautifully presented in like an upscale style. And so I just wanted to say, what are you doing with music in St. Jack?
Oh, I mean, like I've always done the playlists for Saint Jack and Lemuel, and that was like one of my hobbies. Was just to work on that, find weird off, 60s cuts from France, and find and putting yourself in a box too, right? So a lot of what we opened Lemuel with, for example, was I wanted it to feel like a 1970s sort of Warhol party, and that's the way the space kind of looked, and it fit the space. So the music was kind of the same, a lot of Velvet Underground, a lot of that genre. And then as we kind of evolved, I started adding more European music into it, more funky stuff, more hip hop as well, just because we wanted the place to feel kind of light. Saint Jack is the same. You expect it to be a fancy French restaurant, but honestly, like I'm incredibly fucking pretentious. Like, right? Like I'm incredibly pretentious, but only about certain things. And so the rest of my personality is very much really low key and really easygoing, and lighthearted, sort of, depending on who you ask. But that's kind of the way St. Jack, I feel like, plays best, is that it's a bit of both worlds, right? Like, so the music there is going to be, some of it's going to be boppy and happy and fun, and grandma is in the corner pissed off because like this isn't French music, and it's like, no, it is Grems, who is like, a hip hop guy
Yeah.
from Paris, but it's absolutely French. And it can't just all be warbling Edith Piaf,
Right.
trilling around in the background. So
That is a great pull. We next see the Nordic smokehouse, the living quarters, and then the restaurant, and we see chefs and tweezers. Again, it's a punchline, and the critics talk about food being over tweezered, but it is a tool used in kitchens for a reason. I mean, where do you stand on the use of the infamous tweezers?
I was firmly anti-tweeze for many years, most of my career. When people started using tweezers, I was like, oh, for fuck's sakes, get out of here with that. Like that is ridiculous. Use your hands.
Yeah.
Mind you, this is also back in the day where like you kept a spoon in your back pocket so you could taste things. You know what I mean? Like it was a different time. But yeah, the tweezers now, like I use them. I think once I actually started using a pair here and there, I was like, I would borrow somebody's and use it. I'm like, these are actually pretty handy. And now, like, I've got one in my apron every time I go to do anything. So, in fact, I actually brought some home, and then ironically, my son and my daughter and my wife all use the tweezers.
Yes.
So now we have multiple tweezers. We're
A multiple tweezer family. I love it.
yeah, you can just call you can call them micro tongs, and maybe it makes you feel a little bit better about them. Like they're not tweezers; they're just.
But like it serves the purpose of the tweezers can help with like the meticulous like placing of something. But like I think of your food and Tim at like Scotch Lodge, you can be free and fun and kind of messy with something and then plate something pretty in that, and it just looks like some of Tim's stuff looks like marble work on a plate,
Oh yeah, for sure.
Toss around. It's just I love how he plates stuff, and so it's interesting using the mixtures of those things. It's got to be
Well,
fun.
it's that haircut from the '90s, right? Like where you spend an hour trying to make it look like you didn't do anything to it.
Yes,
It's the same. It's the same hair. It's the same thing. And so for us, that's my game, right? I don't like anything that looks over manipulated. Like somebody's just really. I don't like anything to be too perfect. I worked in places where they forced you to be too perfect, and I'm just not that guy. So for me, it was more a matter of like a little bit bombastic. I like feet on things and heads on things, and I like I like color, or lack of color, but it has to do a thing for me. I have to like find it attractive, and I don't find things that are perfect attractive.
Like when you roasted a whole fish head and shoved a bunch of French fries in its mouth.
I did that, yeah, and I thought it was beautiful.
Good. They're told not to photograph the meal, but my phone's full of food photos, and that's how my wife and I remember our evenings and time together. So I get it, but also I get it.
That guy was full of shit. Take pictures of your food.
Yeah.
Take pictures of my food. Do whatever you want.
Exactly. Taylor asks a chef if he uses a Paco jet. That's a real thing?
Yeah.
Okay,
They're
what is
expensive. Jet is basically this thing where you can have a cylinder or a canister, and then it's got this little burr. You pop it on, and you push a button, and this burr goes into the middle of this thing and buzzes around at like 5,000 horsepower. It's ridiculous. They're used for making oil in different colors or infusions. They're made for tempering sorbets or ice creams. Like if you ever see at very high-end places, they do those like perfect little, they're called a quenelle, but like a football shape.
Yes, yeah.
Out of sorbet. Well, like you've scooped ice cream out of your freezer, I'm sure at some point, been like, grunting and groaning and veins are bugging out of your forehead. They use this machine to actually like temper it to the perfect consistency so that it'll go like soft butter basically.
Okay.
It's a neat machine, but people who have them claim that they do a lot. They really don't, but they're cool. And if I had however many thousands of dollars to throw at one, I probably would.
They get an amuse-bouche next. It's compressed and pickled cucumber melon with milk snow and charred lace. The critic comments on the snow obsession. Is there still a snow obsession, do you think? Or is this just a trend they picked as a joke?
That dish seemed dated.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that seemed like that was like 2008.
Yeah. Yes.
I would say.
I remember
I had a lovely yogurt snow that I did on a deconstructed borscht. I used to do.
Oh, well, Sarah would love that. So if you bring back that borscht, let me know.
I will.
John Leguizamo plays a fallen movie star, and we learn that his agent's leaving him. We get more work bros, and they're just terrible people. But they keep the restaurant going, and that's necessary. So those expense accounts are an important thing. There's a comment here on the idolization of chefs, and that's something that I'm guilty of. I think it takes a lot for people to train in your profession, and once they're in it, like you said, it can take from family and loved ones and life. But also every chef that I've had the pleasure of getting to know has been a really awesome person, and absolutely nothing like the giant marble statue I've chiseled of them in my head. Speaking of Patrick McKee, Jose Chesa, I mean, it's just yourself. I'm like, I try to be like, hey, you made this really amazing thing. And you go, yeah, it's just a butter sauce or whatever. And I'm like, oh, all right, well, changed my life
Once,
at the moment.
once you know how to do this stuff, it's pretty easy. But I mean, the thing is too is like, look, I know those guys, and they are great guys.
Yeah.
But and I've never worked for them. I can guarantee you that they've been mean at some
Yeah,
point
yeah.
in their career.
Oh, sure.
We all have, and I used to be a monster when I was young. I would throw things and scream at people and dump out food. I mean, it was awful. But yeah, I think ultimately you get to a point in your career where you can kind of like take a breath and realize that you know what you're doing. I think a lot of it just stems from like being not very confident,
Mhm.
or just having a lack of confidence, and so you just feel like you have to control everything and freak out all the time, and yeah.
Okay, well, we get the first Slowick clap, and service begins.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Welcome to Hawthorne. I'm Julian Slowick, and tonight it'll be our pleasure to feed you.
Our first course is the island. It's plants from the island served on rocks from the shore, seasoned with barely frozen seawater, which is going to melt and season the dish. It's a scallop, essentially.
Yeah.
I get it. I get so the joke is that they're using rocks as a serving vessel, something that I've seen in restaurants. I was in Departure when Gregory was there, and they served like a Kobe or Wagyu beef on a hot rock that was just smoking and really bumming out the vegan people next to us. But
That'll do it. Yeah.
it really, I was like, I can't control this. I'm sorry, but yeah, serving on rocks. It's interesting. I'd eat the scallop though.
I was told when I was young that you never serve anything on a plate that you can't eat. But
Oh,
then I'm like that, that was what I was taught. However, like over the years, of course, I thought I was very cool, and I would put tiles and sheets and underneath. I don't even know anymore. I had everything played on everything. I had rocks, and bricks, you name it. I actually did a dinner at Restaurant Beck where I served something I feel like it was on a hammer. Like
I love that.
yeah. I'm not sure why.
That's great. Tyler interrupts and worries that the chef is mad at him. And then this is an interesting part. Their wine pairing is one vine. And I was like, how long is this vine if they're going to make a wine? It's crazy long. Leguizamo is going to pitch a food show, and his agent says that he must embellish as he's eating. And I don't think that's true because I saw the Stanley Tucci show where he goes around Italy and eats, and he mostly just goes, wow, or damn. Basically,
Yeah, but the thing with him is that he's become a caricature, right? Like he's Goldbloomed. You know what I mean? Like he's turned into Jeff Goldblum. And so like that is what he does. And you know that his response is gonna be, wow.
Yeah.
And he's just gonna so that's all you want.
It's true.
You want a couple of buttons popped.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all you need.
The next course is no bread. They're a restaurant known for their bread, and they're not going to serve bread. A joke that the critic makes is that she makes her own yeast for the bread from apples. And again, Sarah and I were like, that's just resourceful. I don't get why that's funny.
Yeah. I haven't made my own yeast yet. Got to work on that.
Yeah. In your free time, could you please?
Oh, yeah. My little yeast farm.
The critic notices a broken emulsion, and so she served a bowl of it. The rich bros try to demand bread, and now Sarah and I were recently at King Tide. I don't know if you've been there yet, but
I haven't. No.
It's beautiful Peruvian restaurant attached to a hotel, which I get food's getting better at that when they're attached to hotels, but I also understand when they have to serve like the burger, the standards, like you have to feed the people that are staying there. But his Peruvian flavors there are really great. Alex Diestra and an amazing team of hotel staff. But there was a man that was there, and we will remember your face forever if you're rude in a restaurant that we're in because you're being rude to our people. And he demanded a bread that was different from what they were serving. And you know what they did is they got him bread. They made it happen. And we were mad that he got the bread because we
Yeah.
can't be rude to people like that. But also, I don't know the whole story of the situation, but it was just one of those things where I realized that people just make things happen despite,
No,
someone.
we used to we had people come in. I remember when we first opened St. Jack, and they were just furious that we didn't have Budweiser, right? And they were just so mad. Made a huge production out of it. And Joel went to the store and he bought some Budweiser and he brought it back, and that guy drank 3 Budweisers, and we drank the rest of them at the end of the night, and that was it. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of accommodations. The only ones, like me with my ketchup, is the only thing that I'm a real hardo about.
There's
So
no ketchup,
absolutely no ketchup.
but you did have a curry ketchup.
That was at Lemuel. Lemuel, I was more forgiving.
Okay, because I loved that curry ketchup, and we make a version of that in our home to remind
Oh
us
yeah,
of when we
it's
have.
good stuff.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
It's great because we don't like ketchup. So when you add that curry situation to the,
I know.
it's
It
like, oh,
fixes
this is
everything.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Slowick and Margot have their first face-off now in the film.
You haven't touched your food.
There is no food.
No, this is food.
So, lots more food to come. Don't want to fill up.
That would not be possible. I've precisely designed the portions to account for that, so you won't fill up. Please eat. The menu only makes sense if you eat.
But you told us not to eat.
That is not what I meant, madam. You know it.
Well, thank you for your concern, but I am perfectly capable of deciding when I eat and what.
And we get our third course. It's wine hyper decanted by an immersion blender. Wouldn't that destroy the structure of the wine? Question mark.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
That sounds crazy.
It's memory is this course, and they have a house smoked breast chicken thigh al pastor with heirloom masa tortillas. What is breast?
Well, first off, this island has masa. This island has corn. Where's this fucking island? Anyway, where the scallops and the corn come together. Anyway, what was it? What?
Well, breast, BRE.
Oh, Brest. That's a region. It's a region of France, and it's their national bird. So if you ever see there's always that rooster that people associate with France. It's that bird. The legs are blue, and the body is white, and the coxcomb is red.
Oh.
So all the colors of the flag.
Yes.
There's a guy farming them here, in Oregon, or maybe Washington, but they're crazy expensive. So it's I've had the pleasure of eating breast chicken about 5 or 6 times, and it's really good. It's not like chicken. There's definitely no Zaki Farms going on this one.
Is it more like duck, or is it still like white meat situation?
No, it's chicken. It's just got more flavor. So if you like dark meat, yeah, it's just more flavorful. More flavorful. There's more fat in the skin. It's a skinnier bird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a super chicken.
And from what I read, part of that is due to the diet of it. I was reading something about the soil in the region where it is. There's such a rich amount of worms and stuff underneath the dirt that the chicken are dining on. I don't know.
You know more about this than I do. The thing, what it is the French and the Italians. They love their AOCs and DOCs and
Yes.
all their denominations and exactly the rules. And so they've got it down to this point where it's this fucking chicken has to have all these attributes for it to be. And when you buy them, they come with the head still attached, with the feathers still on the head. They leave and they, it's presented a certain way. It's got a whole rich history.
All right. Well, an heirloom masa for people, I looked it up. Fine ground corn, high quality heirloom corn that's cooked, dried, and milled in small batches for a deeper flavor. From the cornfield on the island. At this point, everyone could use a break, and so could we. So we will be right back. RoboCop. Did I catch you in time? Are you still there? Remember when Paul McCrane gets all melty from toxic waste and then splats on a car? Imagine that movie without that scene. Would it still be good? Okay, bad example, RoboCop rules, but his death adds flavor. And you know what else adds flavor? Marshall's hot sauce. You can wake up any boring meal with habanero carrot curry or serrano ginger lemongrass, just to name a few. These delicious and flavorful sauces will have you grinning bigger than Tarman in Return of the Living Dead. Marshall's hot sauce even has a new line of seasonings, including an incredible barbecue rub, where they soak dates in whiskey and then freeze dry them and powder them to add a little sweetness with no added sugar. There's also chicken marinade and even a volcano sparkle that'll make your body melt, just like in the movie Body Melt. The best part is you can enter VHUS Podcast at checkout for 20% off. So liven up those meals and your taste buds at marshallshotsauce.com and enter VHS Podcast for 20% off. And now, back to the show. And we're back, and it's time for the fourth course, The Mess.
Jeremy, do you like this life that you dreamed about?
No, Chef.
Mm-hmm. And do you want my life? Not my position and my talent, my life.
No, Chef. Ladies and gentlemen, your fourth course, Sous Chef Jeremy's The Mess.
Jeremy blows his brains out, and they serve pressure-cooked filet, roasted veggies, potato confit, beef jus, and bone marrow. I feel like you would have added a more elaborate sauce here. That's just me.
Yeah, it didn't look good. I'm not gonna lie to you. The meat looked terrible. That whole set looked pretty boring.
Right?
But, I expected more out of that. You just killed a guy for this dish. You would expect it to be a little bit more, a little more oomph to it.
Yeah.
But maybe that was part of it, right? That was part of the presentation. It was more about the blood.
It wasn't really messy enough. I feel like, Tim at Scott.
There should have been a Tim moment where there was a spatter across it or something. I get it. A beat reduction.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Next, they sever a man's ring finger, and Tyler just keeps eating through the whole thing. That's the continuous joke, is that all this horrible stuff's happening around him, and he's just like, what's the next course? Or Slowick tells Margot where she belongs, choosing a side between the people working at the restaurant and those that are out there in the seats.
You belong here, with your own breed.
And what breed is that?
With the shit shovelists. You thought I couldn't tell? Oh, I know a fellow service industry worker when I see one.
We get a palate cleanser tea, and then Slowick next kills the angel investor, which, for you, would that be Chef's Table, or who would you be?
No. We actually had a couple of investors over the years that were the ones that made it happen. Chef's Table doesn't really, in all capacity, they don't really give money. They don't supply money in advance to open places often. It does happen, I know, but it would be one of two men.
Interesting.
Yeah.
They can take turns hoping who it's not. We all go outside for the next course introduction, which is about unwanted sexual advances in the kitchen. Chefs abusing their power to get what they want, which I'm hoping happens less to this day.
Yeah. I mean, it does still happen. I've seen it. It's pretty bad. But yeah, honestly, nowadays the whole dynamic in the kitchen is so different than it used to be. You don't see nearly as much of that kind of stuff anymore.
That's good news. He's stabbed with a pair of scissors, and all the men are told to run. Meanwhile, the women enjoy a dish called Man's Folly. It's Dungeness crab, fermented yogurt whey, dried sea lettuce, umeboshi, and kelp.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think?
I'm not sure what that has to do with masculinity.
Yeah,
I know. Man's Folly. I'm not sure what the vibe was there, but seaweed.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of seaweed on seaweed. Foams are still a thing. There's still lots of foams. Yeah. Especially I'm seeing a lot in the cocktail world. A lot of things where they make almost like a marshmallow situation.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's very
No, it's the bar guys. They love getting involved in that stuff. I've had bartenders over the years who've done a ton of these kinds of like foamy cocktails or weird cocktails. But yeah, we do them judiciously on the menu. Sometimes here and there, it'll be a sauce, or we'll lightly froth the sauce. So it's not like it's to aerate it more than anything else. Which
yes.
actually, like the more air you can pump into it, the better it tastes. So we will lightly froth it with like I call them a boat motor, but an immersion blender.
Yes.
And or there's also the ISIs. So if you use an ISI canister, we use that for cheese. We do like at Heavenly Creatures. That's how we do the camembert that we do there.
Okay. Yeah, because I think when we were there at St. Jack, you made this beautiful uni pasta dish, and then there was like some type of foam situation that went on top. I just went back and looked at the picture, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
forgot about
I forgot. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I remember the pasta. I don't remember what was on top though.
Yeah. And then one of the people in the restaurant says emoji instead of umabashi, which is pretty fun. All the men are found, and the last one's in a chicken coop, and he gets a bonus. It's their take on the passard egg with creme fraiche and maple. It's also a dish known as the hot cold egg. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, I've not had it, but I'm familiar with it. There's like dishes that are canon out there, in the world, and if you're a chef, like where somebody got the inspiration for that dish. We've done dishes that are caviar and maple, with creme fraiche as well. So it's kind of a riff with like a different kind of egg, but the same flavor profile. But yeah, that's a good one.
But like, what's happening there? Is it a hot cold situation? Why do they call it hot cold?
I'm not honestly sure. There's a few different ones that are like that, a few different dishes that do the same kind of a thing. There's a chef in the south of France, his name is eluding me, but like where they serve, Katie Millard used to work there. Anyway, where they take tomatoes, like cherry tomatoes, and they will blanch them in boiling water, peel the skin off, and then they put them into caramel, like a bubbling hot melted sugar. And they put it into that and then go directly into water again. So it has a crystal coating on the outside. And that's another one that is referred to as a hot cold.
Oh.
But the egg, I'm not 100% sure.
Tyler's first question upon returning is, what'd you get? He was just running for his life. And his first question is about the course. Very funny. Tyler gets a chef jacket. He's forced to cook. And then we get the next course called Tyler's Bullshit. It's undercooked lamb, inedible shallot, leek butter, and an utter lack of cohesion.
That's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yes,
it kills me.
Well, it kills him.
Ultimately.
The next scene, Margot must fetch a barrel. She gets the keys. The chef hates John Leguizamo's movie, Goodbye, Mr. Sunshine, and he calls him an artist who's lost his purpose. My favorite part of this is where he says, what about my agent person? Can't she live? And he says, what school did you go to? And she says, and he goes, student loan? She said, no. And he said, you will die.
You will die.
Margot and Elsa fight, and there's the Paco jet in this scene, and Elsa dies. Margot sees a picture of the chef wearing a Kiss the Cook apron, holding a spatula with a burger patty on it, and he's smiling. It's a little detail there. She calls for help. It arrives, but it's a trick. He works for the restaurant, and no one's going to save these people.
Nobody move until I say so. No one move.
Hey, don't have nothing to do with it. No.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you.
It's almost time for the final course, but before that moment, Margot has a last idea. She asks for a cheeseburger and fries. Now we have a music change here, and the frenetic chef's table arpeggio is gone, and instead the soundtrack here is like the drawn-out sort of calm warbling of an Enya song. It's interesting that they choose that. He smiles for the first time while he's cooking it. She smiles for the first time while she's eating it, and then he smiles seeing her eat the food and actually enjoy it. In this moment, if you were the chef and you were asked to make a dish that brought you joy, what would be a dish that you would create?
I mean, honestly, I do like cooking burgers a lot. That's one of my favorite things to cook, because when you nail it, you really do nail it. I think that would be probably it, honestly. I also like making menudo.
Okay.
I have no reason to like making menudo, but I do like menudo a lot.
Yeah, I've had burgers from yourself on more than one occasion, and they're all great. Also, your BLTs were really fantastic, and
Oh
there,
yeah.
there's a fish sandwich that you do that
Yep.
I still don't understand, and you even told us the name of what was happening to create that fish patty, but
Mhm.
Sarah was like, "This is the best fish sandwich I've ever had in my life," not even in a joking way, like in a way,
No,
someone's like,
we
"I have a favorite."
we bring that one back now and again. It was actually on the menu about 2 weeks ago, just
Yeah.
for one night only kind of a thing. But we honestly, when I was trying to get St. Jack up and running, it took so long to get going that my backup plan was to open a sandwich shop
Yeah,
because I love sandwiches.
you'd
I
kill it.
love sandwiches.
Yeah. Talk about a hot cold dish. You have a great way of combining like a cold, delicious, rich sauce with like, pickles and your the acid and the saltiness of the meat. You have great ways of composing those dishes, I think. So I would go to your
Thank you.
shop. Yeah. Sign me.
I appreciate it. I'll have to bump off Rick Gencarelli.
I don't
Take over the burger,
Yeah.
the sandwich game.
That is an empire. So she smiles after tasting it and he lets her leave because she has to get it to go. This beautiful little moment.
One cheeseburger to go. And a gift bag. Thank you for dining at Hawthorne.
Thank you for for everything.
There's a funny bit here about gift bags where they're getting granola or the severed dude's finger. Margot takes off on the boat, and dessert is s'mores. I don't like to talk disparagingly about movies on here personally, but I really don't like the ending of this movie.
Yeah.
I get like the top down shots of like, yes, it looks like a giant plate, and they did stencil the emblem on the marshmallows.
hmm
I get it. We do that in restaurants where we're burning things onto ice cubes and all kinds of fun ways that we can do that.
Yeah.
I don't like fake fire, and it's just so overtly silly.
Yeah. I did notice that. Yeah, for sure.
End it that like I was just like, if this wasn't here and she just left and they like explode or something, I wouldn't, but it does work for a lot of people, but it's just one of those things that if I'm being completely honest, anything other than this ending was like
They
any other way. Like
they phoned that fire in. That wasn't the best.
it's not great. She sits on the boat, she eats her burger, and that's the end. So any final thoughts on the menu?
I really enjoyed it. It's one of those movies like everybody's always all talking about the bear, but realistically, like I actually preferred this movie because I found that sort of that comedy element.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of it that's true and a lot of it that's real, like the way a lot of these kitchens that are almost like comic book versions of what restaurants are. Um, but there's enough truth in it that makes it incredibly charming. And for somebody like me, I don't like watching The Bear. It's kind of
Yeah.
an annoying show. It's like really just a lot of yelling, and so for me it was yeah, this one rings true for me, I think, especially working at like high level places where it's a lot of yes chefs and a lot of
Yeah.
you do what you're told, very militant and all that. And it also just shows how shitty guests can be sometimes
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Not all of them,
No.
but just like every once in a while you get some people come in, and people who know a lot about food or claim to know a lot about food, and sometimes people just need to come in and relax and enjoy.
Yeah.
That's why I got into it, was because I want to feed people. I didn't get into it so that somebody would like nitpick a certain portion of what I do. Like I just want people to eat well. I'm doing my best to make sure that the food's yummy and looks nice. But that's really what it boils down to. And I think sometimes if people would just like chill out, come into the restaurant, relax, let us take care of you. We're all very good at that. The front of house is good at that. My cooks are good at that. Just let us do the thing. Don't worry and try to control it. Like that's one place where you should just relax and try to be. That's what it's there for.
Yeah.
But the people who know everything and try to control everything, they're the ones who tend to have the harder time, and a harder time for us too.
Yeah, we were in San Diego shortly, I think, after Sarah's book came out, and went to a restaurant, and they knew why we were there, and they seated us at the like the pass, and which is like our favorite place in a restaurant. We love to be at the counter where we can see all the different zones and be like,
Sure.
"Oh," and we're like, that person's in charge of the fryer, that person's over there shucking oysters, this person's doing like salads over there, and we like to see the sort of the culture of the kitchen and
Yeah.
how it plays out. And then the expediting of the dishes is always fascinating. And at this restaurant, like the sommelier came over and presented us with like a little sparkling to welcome us into the restaurant, which is, a lot of restaurants do that. It's a lovely way to greet someone. They even gave our daughter some like juice in a wine glass, so she
Yeah. Yeah.
was super fancy, you know. And she's like, "I think
Mhm.
everyone thinks I'm drinking wine," and we were like, "You, you're like 7. No, it's not happening." But
You've got them all fooled. Eh?
yeah, yeah, okay. But I love watching everything happen. And at St. Jack, we've had really awesome memories of sitting it there and watching sort of how this person's talking about this, and when someone brings something like to the person expediting the dishes, those interactions between the people, and that's my favorite is that.
See, that stuff stresses me out. I can't sit at a chef's counter at all. I'm just like glaring. Like I look angry.
Oh, no.
And my wife is sitting next to me. She's like, "You're supposed to be talking to me," and I'm just like staring at some guy cooking something wrong. It makes me anxious. So, but I do know that people love these chef's counters, and so
Ah,
for me, that was a no-brainer when we designed the restaurant, was to make sure we had some seats there so that you can see that interaction. And like for me, I don't want the kitchen to come off as silent or really stuffy. So if you're sitting at that pass, like you hear what they talk about and
yeah,
you hear what they're saying. You hear if somebody gets angry. You hear if somebody's happy. You hear shitty jokes sometimes. You hear like you become sort of part of that room.
yeah.
And you got your back to the rest of the space, so you're more in our world than in the others. So
Well, fantastic. Thank you for your time. It's great to see you, and
yeah, you too.
we'll be coming into the restaurant soon. As you know, my daughter is a big fan of caviar, so we're gonna come in and have the caviar service.
Oh yeah.
First, it was fish eggs. It's Tim's fault, actually, at Scotch Lodge, because he did a scallop dish with a cured fish egg on it. And our daughter ate all of it. She ate all of it off of there. And so then every restaurant she goes to, she's like, "Do they have fish eggs?" And then we let her try caviar once at Le Moule, where you were serving it with Pringles and
Oh yeah.
creme fraiche. And she wasn't into it then. But then a couple years later, now she is. We were at King Tide, and they thought it was so amazing that she liked caviar. They gave her her own pearl caviar spoon.
Oh cool. That's
And
fun.
our 10-year-old daughter has her own spoon. And then I was
Perfect.
looking at where to take our family, and I was like, "Oh, they have caviar service at St. Jack," and so we're gonna take our daughter there for caviar. Which
That's perfect.
Yeah.
We're doing it right now with creme fraiche, chives, and churros. They're potato churros.
Oh, right, I saw that.
Yeah, yeah. It's a fun little like. It's a classic French thing, but we decided to use a piping tip, and then we pipe them directly into the deep fryer instead of baking them like you're supposed to. And they come out looking just like a little churro, but they taste like a nice little crunchy potato thing.
What is Delphinois?
That's what that is. Yes, it's half potato and half, or well, it's more potato, but it's potato and pâte à choux, which is the same stuff, the same batter that they make eclairs out of or cream puffs.
Yeah.
It's not sweetened at all, but if you combine the two of them, it basically aerates when you cook it and creates a hollow in the middle. And so when you add the potato, you wind up getting kind of this crispy exterior, and the inside kind of like poofs and becomes hollow. So you wind up being able to fill it. In this case, it's just like creates like a nice like crunchy potato on the outside and like a creamy layer on
Okay, we'll be in really soon.
the.
Do you have anything else? Anything to promote? Anything coming up? This is going to come out the day before Valentine's Day, so I'm sure you're
Day
all.
before Valentine's Day. Hey, St. Jack. No, St. Jack's, we've got a big menu going on that night, as we always do, and we're always very busy. So, but we do generally have some fallout, and then it makes room for more people to come in. We will be serving at the bar an a la carte menu of caviar and all sorts of other good stuff as well.
Any Coquille St. Jack coming back?
I did Coquille St. Jack for New Year's.
Ah,
And honestly, right now with some of the younger cooks that we have, we're bringing back some of our classic dishes just because they haven't seen them. So yeah, you will likely see that pop back up here pretty quick. I will have the reservation system updated so it knows when they come back, so that it will update you, and we will let you know.
that's what I'm talking about. This level of
Yeah.
Well, Eric, thank you so much. It's been great to chat, and I'll come see you in the restaurant really soon. As always, I'm Dirk Marshall, and this has been VH Us.
Would you really want